The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, originally published in 1925. This audiobook is narrated by CliffNote Chronicles. Can our thoughts really change our destiny? Is it possible to attract wealth, success, and love simply through the power of words? In this audiobook, we'll uncover the secrets of a book that has transformed the mindset of millions. The Game of Life and How to Play It. This book teaches that life is not a struggle, but a game, and the one who understands its rules is the one who wins. If you're looking for positive change, self-confidence, success, and inner peace in your life, then stay with this journey until the very end. Because one idea you hear today might completely change your life forever. The world around you may look random, uncertain, even unfair at times, but somewhere beneath the noise of everyday life, beneath the fear, the doubt, the endless pressure to survive, there is a quiet truth waiting to be remembered, a truth so powerful that once you truly understand it, you begin to see your entire life differently. And that truth is this: life is not happening to you. Life is responding to you. Every thought you hold, every word you repeat, every emotion you nurture inside your heart is shaping the experiences that return back to you, almost like invisible seeds being planted into the soil of existence, growing silently until one day they appear as circumstances, relationships, opportunities, successes, or even struggles. And the moment you realize this, the game begins to change. Most people move through life believing they are powerless, believing success belongs to the lucky, peace belongs to the chosen, and abundance belongs to someone else. But deep within you there is a force greater than fear, stronger than limitation, and wiser than logic itself. The ancient spiritual laws of life are always working, whether you notice them or not. And when your mind becomes aligned with those laws, life begins to open in ways that once seemed impossible. Suddenly doors appear where walls once stood, clarity arrives where confusion once lived, and opportunities begin finding you almost effortlessly. Not because the universe is playing favorites, but because your inner world has started changing the outer one. You have probably noticed how one negative thought can shape an entire day, how one fearful expectation can quietly create tension in your body, hesitation in your actions, and distance in your relationships. That is because the subconscious mind listens to every word you repeatedly tell yourself. It does not argue. It does not judge. It simply accepts and creates. If you constantly say, "Nothing ever works for me," your mind begins searching for proof. If you say, "I always struggle," life starts arranging circumstances that mirror that belief. But when you begin speaking differently, when you begin affirming peace, success, confidence, health, love, and abundance, something powerful begins shifting inside you. At first, it feels subtle, almost invisible, like the first light before sunrise. You start noticing your thoughts more carefully. You become aware of the silent conversations happening in your mind every day. And slowly, you understand that words are not empty sounds. They are creative forces. Every sentence carries energy. Every belief sends out a signal. Every emotion acts like a magnet pulling similar experiences toward you. This is why gratitude changes people, because gratitude shifts your focus from lack to abundance. And whatever you consistently focus on expands. There is a reason some people seem calm even during storms, while others panic at the smallest uncertainty. The difference is not circumstances. The difference is consciousness. A prosperous mind sees possibility where others see problems. A faithful heart trusts that even delays are preparing something greater. And when you begin developing this kind of mindset, your entire emotional world starts transforming. You stop reacting impulsively to fear, rejection, or temporary failure. Instead, you begin understanding that every moment carries hidden guidance. Every obstacle contains a lesson, And every painful experience can become the doorway to a wiser version of yourself. This is where faith becomes more than religion, more than ritual, more than blind hope. Faith becomes inner certainty. It becomes the quiet decision to believe in possibilities even before evidence appears. And this kind of faith changes your energy completely. Because when you deeply believe something good is coming, you walk differently, speak differently, think differently, and eventually, you attract differently. Your subconscious mind begins working with your vision instead of against it. But life cannot fully transform while the heart remains filled with resentment. Many people unknowingly block their own peace by holding on to anger, guilt, jealousy, or bitterness from the past. Emotional pain becomes heavy when it is carried for too long, and the energy you cling to eventually shapes your future experiences. This is why forgiveness is not weakness, it is freedom. Forgiveness releases trapped energy. It clears emotional space for healing, love, and new beginnings. Sometimes the person you need to forgive is not even someone else. Sometimes it is yourself. For the mistakes you made while learning. For the years spent doubting your worth. For the times you abandoned your own dreams because fear convinced you they were impossible. And the moment you begin letting go, life begins flowing again. You start realizing that abundance is not only money. Abundance is peace of mind. Abundance is waking up without anxiety controlling your thoughts. Abundance is feeling connected to yourself, trusting your intuition, and believing you deserve beautiful things. The universe often speaks quietly through intuition, through feelings, through inner nudges that logic cannot fully explain. There are moments when your soul already knows the direction before your mind catches up. And learning to trust that inner guidance changes everything. Because many people spend years chasing what looks successful on the outside while feeling empty within. They ignore their true desires, silence their creativity, and disconnect from their authentic self-expression just to fit expectations. But real fulfillment comes when your outer life aligns with your inner truth. When your work, your actions, your relationships, and your energy reflect who you truly are. This is what divine design feels like, a life where you stop forcing and start aligning. And alignment requires mental discipline. Not harsh discipline driven by punishment, but conscious discipline driven by awareness. The ability to redirect negative thoughts before they control you. The ability to remain emotionally centered even when life becomes uncertain. The ability to choose empowering beliefs instead of destructive ones. Because your mind is constantly creating patterns, and repeated thoughts eventually become identity. If you repeat fear every day, fear becomes familiar. If you repeat confidence every day, confidence becomes natural. Visualization becomes powerful here because the mind responds deeply to images and emotions. When you vividly imagine yourself healthy, successful, loved, peaceful, and fulfilled, your subconscious mind begins treating those experiences as real possibilities. Your energy shifts. Your behavior shifts. Your decisions shift. And over time, your reality starts catching up with the vision you have been emotionally rehearsing inside yourself. This is why your environment matters. The conversations you listen to, the energy you surround yourself with, the words you speak daily, they all shape your inner world. If you constantly absorb negativity, criticism, and fear, your mind becomes crowded with limitation. But when you feed your mind with hope, wisdom, faith, positive affirmations, and empowering ideas, your consciousness expands. You begin seeing opportunities others overlook. You begin feeling possibilities instead of limitations. And perhaps one of the most powerful realizations in this journey is understanding that life mirrors your dominant emotional state. People who constantly expect rejection often push love away without realizing it. People who secretly believe they are unworthy struggle to receive success even when opportunities appear. But when your inner identity changes, your external experiences begin changing too. The game of life is deeply connected to self-perception. That is why spoken words carry enormous power. Every time you say, "I can't," your mind weakens. Every time you say, "Nothing ever changes," your energy contracts. But when you begin speaking life into yourself, when you begin saying, "I am capable, I am guided, I deserve abundance, I trust the process of life," your subconscious slowly begins accepting these truths. And once the subconscious accepts something, your behavior naturally aligns with it. You begin taking opportunities instead of avoiding them. You begin attracting healthier relationships because you no longer settle for emotional scarcity. You begin creating from inspiration instead of desperation. And perhaps most importantly, you begin experiencing peace not as something temporary, but as a way of being. Because true spiritual healing is not about escaping life. It is about transforming the way you experience life. It is about becoming emotionally free from constant fear and inner conflict. It is about understanding that your soul was never designed to live trapped in hopelessness. You were meant to create, grow, love, expand, and evolve. There will still be moments of uncertainty. There will still be setbacks, disappointments, and unexpected turns. But when your foundation becomes spiritual awareness instead of fear, you stop seeing difficulties as punishments. You start seeing them as redirections, lessons, and opportunities for deeper growth. Even pain begins revealing hidden wisdom. Even delays begin teaching patience and trust. And somewhere along this journey, something beautiful happens quietly inside you. You stop chasing validation. You stop comparing your timeline to others. You stop measuring your worth through external approval. Instead, you begin building a relationship with yourself, with your mind, your spirit, your inner voice. And from that connection comes a calm kind of confidence that no external circumstance can easily destroy. You begin understanding that prosperity starts within. Success starts within. Love starts within. Peace starts within. And once your inner world changes, the outer world can never remain the same for long. So as you move forward from this moment, remember that your thoughts are shaping pathways. Your words are creating energy. Your emotions are attracting experiences. And your beliefs are building the reality you live inside every day. Choose carefully what you repeat to yourself. Choose carefully what you believe about your future. Because life is always listening. And perhaps tonight, as you sit quietly with your thoughts, breathing slowly, feeling the silence around you, you may begin sensing that deep within your soul, beyond the fear, beyond the doubt, beyond every limitation you once accepted as truth, there has always been a powerful creative force waiting patiently for you to finally believe in it. There is a law hidden beneath the surface of everyday life, a law so quiet that most people pass through their entire existence without ever truly recognizing it. And yet it influences every opportunity, every relationship, every success, every blessing, and every form of abundance that enters their world. Some people spend years chasing prosperity with fear in their hearts, believing money only comes through struggle, exhaustion, sacrifice, and endless anxiety, while others seem to move through life with an invisible confidence, attracting opportunities, support, and unexpected blessings almost effortlessly. And the difference often begins in the mind long before it appears in reality. You may have already noticed how fear changes the way you think, how worry tightens your chest, how doubt slowly steals your energy, and how repeating negative expectations can make life feel heavier with each passing day. The mind becomes what it continuously feeds upon. If you constantly expect lack, disappointment, and limitation, your subconscious mind begins accepting those conditions as truth, and then your actions, emotions, and decisions quietly align with that belief. But the moment you begin understanding the deeper spiritual laws behind prosperity, something powerful starts shifting within you. You begin realizing that prosperity is not only something you earn externally, it is something you cultivate internally first. There was once a woman who lived in constant fear about money, always worried about tomorrow, always expecting something to go wrong, always speaking words of limitation without even noticing it. Every conversation carried the energy of lack. She would say things like, "I never have enough," or "money disappears too quickly," and slowly, without realizing it, she was strengthening the very conditions she feared most. Her thoughts became emotional habits. Her emotional habits became subconscious beliefs, and those beliefs shaped her experiences. Then one day, exhausted from living in fear, she made a decision that changed everything. Instead of speaking scarcity, she began speaking abundance. Instead of imagining failure, she began imagining provision. Every morning she repeated words of faith, even before seeing any physical evidence. At first it felt unnatural, almost impossible, but over time her inner world began transforming. She became calmer, clearer, more hopeful, and strangely, new opportunities started appearing in places she had never looked before. What changed first was not her bank account. What changed first was her consciousness. And this is where the true law of prosperity begins revealing itself to you. Life responds to your dominant inner state. Prosperity consciousness is not pretending problems do not exist. It is choosing not to emotionally surrender to fear. It is understanding that your thoughts carry creative energy, and what you repeatedly hold in your mind slowly begins shaping your reality. Your subconscious mind does not separate jokes from truth, fear from possibility, or imagination from destiny. It accepts whatever you emotionally impress upon it most often. This is why your spoken words matter deeply. Every sentence you repeat becomes an instruction to your inner world. When you constantly speak defeat, exhaustion, hopelessness, and limitation, your subconscious begins creating emotional patterns around those ideas. But when you begin speaking faith, abundance, peace, confidence, opportunity, and gratitude, your mind starts reorganizing itself around expansion rather than fear. You begin noticing possibilities you once ignored. Your emotional energy changes. Your confidence becomes stronger. And people naturally respond differently to someone who carries inner certainty instead of constant anxiety. There is something magnetic about belief. When you truly believe life can improve, you begin walking differently. Your posture changes. Your decisions become bolder. Your energy becomes more open and receptive. This is why two people can face the same situation while experiencing completely different outcomes. One sees obstacles everywhere because fear controls their perception. The other sees opportunities hidden inside difficulty because faith controls theirs. The outer world often reflects the condition of the inner world. And this understanding changes the way you view prosperity itself. Prosperity is not only money. True prosperity includes peace of mind, emotional stability, meaningful relationships, spiritual alignment, health, creativity, confidence, and purpose. There are wealthy people living in emotional emptiness, constantly fearful despite material success. And there are people with modest possessions who carry a deep sense of fulfillment and inner richness. Real abundance begins when your inner life no longer feels ruled by fear. Fear of lack is one of the strongest emotional blocks people carry. It creates tension in the body, desperation in decisions, and panic in the mind. And desperation often pushes people further away from the very opportunities they seek. But when you begin trusting that life is guided by divine order, something begins relaxing inside you. You stop forcing every outcome. You stop obsessively controlling every detail. You begin acting with faith instead of panic. Faith is not passive. Faith is deeply creative. It allows you to move forward before certainty appears. It allows you to believe in unseen possibilities. It allows you to emotionally align yourself with the reality you desire before it physically manifests. And this emotional alignment is what transforms the subconscious mind, because the subconscious responds most strongly to feeling. This is why visualization becomes so powerful. When you vividly imagine yourself successful, peaceful, financially secure, healthy, loved, and fulfilled, your subconscious mind begins accepting those experiences as possible realities. The emotions created during visualization begin shifting your inner frequency. Your nervous system responds differently. Your thoughts become more optimistic. Your actions become more intentional. And gradually, your external reality begins reflecting the images you consistently hold within. But prosperity consciousness cannot grow inside a mind filled with resentment, jealousy, or bitterness. Many people unknowingly block their own abundance because they constantly focus on what others have instead of appreciating what already exists within their own lives. Gratitude changes this immediately. Gratitude moves your attention away from lack and back toward abundance. And whatever receives your focus grows stronger. When you wake up each day appreciating even the smallest blessings, your mind begins training itself to recognize abundance everywhere. You notice opportunities more easily. You feel emotionally lighter. Your relationships improve because you stop operating from emotional scarcity. Gratitude softens fear and strengthens trust. And trust opens the door for intuition. Intuition often arrives quietly. It does not scream. It whispers. Sometimes it appears as a sudden inner knowing. Sometimes as a feeling pulling you toward a new direction. Sometimes as a sense that something no longer aligns with your spirit. Prosperity often requires trusting these inner nudges. Many people stay trapped in painful situations because fear convinces them safety is more important than growth. But your soul was never meant to remain imprisoned by limitation. The law of prosperity also teaches that giving and receiving are deeply connected. Life moves in cycles. Energy flows where openness exists. People who constantly cling to fear often struggle to receive because their minds remain emotionally closed. But generosity creates expansion. Kindness creates expansion. Encouragement creates expansion. Love creates expansion. This does not mean giving recklessly or ignoring wisdom. It means understanding that abundance flows more naturally through an open heart than a fearful one. And while moving through this journey, you begin understanding the importance of emotional control. Not emotional suppression, but emotional awareness. Because one fearful moment does not define your destiny unless you continue feeding it. Thoughts become powerful through repetition. Emotions become powerful through attachment. And your future often grows from the emotional patterns you repeatedly nurture. This is why affirmations work when spoken with belief and emotional presence. Empty repetition changes little. But when you speak words with conviction, feeling, and faith, your subconscious begins listening more deeply. Imagine waking up every morning and saying, "I am guided toward abundance. I trust life to support me. I attract peace, prosperity, and meaningful opportunities. I deserve success without fear. My life is aligned with divine order." Over time, those words stop feeling imaginary. They begin feeling familiar. And what becomes familiar to the subconscious eventually becomes natural to your behavior. You begin acting from confidence instead of insecurity. You stop shrinking your dreams out of fear of failure. You stop expecting rejection before opportunities even arrive. And slowly, your external world starts responding differently because your internal energy has changed. There is also a deeper spiritual truth hidden inside prosperity, one that many people overlook while chasing material success. Life is not only asking what you want to receive. Life is also asking who you are becoming while pursuing it. Because wealth without peace creates emptiness. Success without purpose creates exhaustion. Achievement without emotional healing creates loneliness. Prosperity is most powerful when it grows alongside spiritual awareness. And spiritual awareness changes your relationship with struggle itself. Instead of seeing every obstacle as punishment, you begin viewing challenges as opportunities for growth, alignment, and transformation. Delays teach patience. Disappointments teach clarity. Failures teach wisdom. Sometimes life removes certain paths because they no longer match the person you are becoming. This is where forgiveness becomes essential again. You cannot fully receive new blessings while emotionally chained to old wounds. The energy of resentment drains creativity, blocks intuition, and weakens emotional freedom. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it releases your future from being controlled by it. And once emotional heaviness begins lifting, prosperity flows more naturally because your inner world is no longer resisting peace. The law of attraction is often misunderstood because people focus only on desire while ignoring emotional alignment. You do not attract only through wishing. You attract through identity, belief, emotion, expectation, and energy. If someone desires success but secretly believes they are unworthy, the subconscious conflict creates resistance. But when desire and belief finally align, manifestation becomes more natural. And this alignment grows stronger through mental discipline, through choosing empowering thoughts repeatedly, through protecting your mind from constant negativity, through consciously redirecting fear before it controls your actions. Prosperity consciousness requires awareness because the mind naturally drifts toward old patterns if left unchecked. But the beautiful thing about the subconscious mind is that it can be retrained. New beliefs can be planted. New emotional patterns can be created. New visions can become emotionally familiar. And over time, the person who once lived in fear begins becoming someone entirely different. You begin noticing beauty more often. You stop obsessing over what is missing. You trust yourself more deeply. Your intuition sharpens. Your emotional reactions soften. Your relationships become healthier because you are no longer approaching life from desperation. Even your body begins responding differently because peace creates a different internal chemistry than fear. And somewhere in the middle of this transformation, you realize something extraordinary. Prosperity was never only about acquiring more. It was about becoming more conscious, more aligned, more emotionally free, more spiritually awake, and more connected to the creative power already living within you. You realize that life is constantly responding to your inner conversation. Every fearful expectation sends energy outward. Every hopeful belief sends energy outward. Every spoken affirmation shapes the subconscious. Every emotional state influences perception. Every act of gratitude strengthens abundance consciousness. Every moment of faith weakens fear. And as this awareness deepens, you stop feeling like a victim of circumstances. You begin feeling like a conscious participant in your own reality. You begin understanding that divine order is always moving beneath the surface, even during uncertain moments. Sometimes what appears delayed is simply being prepared more perfectly than you imagined. So tonight, as you breathe slowly and allow these ideas to settle into your spirit, remember this gently. Prosperity is not something far away from you. It begins in the invisible spaces of thought, belief, emotion, and expectation. It begins with the words you speak when nobody is listening. It begins with the vision you continue holding even when results have not appeared yet. It begins with trusting that your life can change before physical proof arrives. And perhaps, in this quiet moment, you may finally understand that the greatest wealth you can ever possess is not fearlessly chasing abundance outside yourself, but awakening the abundance that has been waiting inside you all along. Long before you fully understand the power of your actions, life quietly begins responding to the power of your words. Every sentence you repeat, every thought you speak aloud, every fearful prediction, every hopeful affirmation, every emotional declaration, they all carry energy far greater than most people realize. Words are not empty sounds disappearing into silence. They become impressions upon the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind eventually shapes the experiences, emotions, and circumstances that begin appearing in your life. This is why some people unknowingly create limitation around themselves through constant negative speech, while others slowly transform their reality through words filled with faith, expectation, and spiritual certainty. You may have already noticed how a single sentence can change your emotional state instantly. One harsh word can create anxiety for hours. One encouraging sentence can restore hope inside a tired heart. Words affect the nervous system, the imagination, the emotions, and even the direction of your decisions. And because your subconscious mind listens continuously, what you repeatedly say about yourself eventually becomes part of your identity. If you constantly speak weakness, your mind begins believing weakness is natural. If you repeatedly speak confidence, abundance, peace, and possibility, your inner world gradually begins aligning with those ideas. There was once a woman who carried deep fear about her future. She constantly worried about failure, loss, rejection, and disappointment. Without realizing it, she spoke these fears into her life every day. She would say things like, "Nothing good ever lasts," or "I always struggle." And over time, those words became emotional habits. Her mind accepted them as truth. Her body responded with stress. Her decisions became smaller, safer, more fearful. Life itself began reflecting the atmosphere she carried within her speech. Then one day, after hearing that words shape reality more deeply than most people understand, she decided to change the language she used about herself and her future. Instead of speaking defeat, she began speaking faith. Every morning she repeated, "Divine intelligence guides me. Only good can come into my life. I trust the path unfolding before me." At first the words felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, because fear had become emotionally familiar for so long. But slowly something began shifting. Her emotional state softened. Her confidence strengthened. New opportunities started appearing. More importantly, she stopped feeling trapped by fear. Her outer life changed because her inner dialogue changed first. And perhaps this is where your own transformation begins, not through dramatic external changes overnight, but through becoming aware of the silent power hidden inside your daily speech. Most people underestimate how often they curse their own future without realizing it. They casually repeat phrases like, "I'll never succeed," "Life is always hard," "Nothing works out for me," "I'm unlucky," "I can't handle this." And the subconscious mind absorbs every one of those declarations like instructions. The subconscious does not question repetition. It accepts it. This is why the spoken word holds extraordinary creative force. Every word carries emotional vibration. Every repeated statement becomes a mental pattern. Every emotional phrase impresses itself deeper into your subconscious mind. And because your subconscious shapes perception, emotional responses, habits, and behavior, your words slowly begin building the reality you experience. In many ways, you are living inside the atmosphere created by your own dominant inner conversation. And once you truly understand this, you begin speaking more consciously. You stop carelessly affirming fear. You stop repeating limitation as if it were destiny. Instead, you begin choosing words that support healing, growth, abundance, peace, and possibility. This does not mean pretending life is perfect. It means refusing to emotionally imprison yourself through destructive speech. There is a deep spiritual law hidden here. Life often mirrors what you continuously declare with emotion and belief. If you constantly expect rejection, your energy begins preparing for rejection before experiences even happen. If you expect failure, hesitation enters your actions. But when you begin expecting support, opportunity, guidance, and abundance, your emotional state changes completely. Your posture changes. Your confidence changes. Your intuition becomes clearer because fear no longer controls every thought. And this is why affirmations become powerful when spoken with emotional conviction rather than empty repetition. Words without feeling remain surface level, but words filled with belief penetrate the subconscious mind more deeply. Imagine waking up each morning and slowly speaking life into yourself. I am guided toward success. I deserve peace. Abundance flows toward me naturally. Divine order is working through every situation. I trust the wisdom within me. Over time, these affirmations begin replacing old emotional patterns. The mind starts building new associations. Fear slowly loses its authority. The beautiful thing about the subconscious mind is that it responds to consistency. Whatever you repeatedly impress upon it eventually feels normal. This means that even if positivity feels unnatural right now, continued emotional repetition can transform your inner world completely. A fearful person can become peaceful. A doubtful person can become confident. A person trapped in scarcity can develop prosperity consciousness. The subconscious can always be retrained. But while changing your words, you also begin noticing how emotions influence the energy behind those words. Two people can say the exact same affirmation while experiencing completely different results. One speaks with hidden doubt, the other with genuine faith. And the subconscious responds far more strongly to emotional certainty than mechanical repetition. This is why emotional healing becomes essential in manifestation and spiritual transformation. Unhealed fear, guilt, shame, resentment, and self-rejection create subconscious resistance. And resistance quietly blocks abundance. Many people say they desire success while secretly believing they are unworthy of it. They speak affirmations outwardly, but internally carry emotional conflict. This is why forgiveness becomes deeply connected to the power of the word. Because forgiveness releases emotional poison from the subconscious mind. Every resentment carried too long becomes a silent burden, draining emotional energy. Every unresolved wound shapes inner dialogue. Sometimes the harshest words you speak are not directed toward others, but toward yourself. You may replay old mistakes in your mind for years, quietly punishing yourself through thoughts like, I ruined everything. I'm not enough. I always fail. And over time, those internal words shape your emotional identity. But healing begins the moment you consciously choose different language. The moment you begin speaking to yourself with compassion instead of condemnation. Because the way you speak to yourself eventually becomes the way you experience life. As this awareness deepens, you start understanding why positive thinking is not shallow optimism. It is spiritual discipline. Your mind naturally absorbs what it repeatedly focuses upon. If you constantly feed yourself fear, criticism, negativity, and hopelessness, your subconscious begins expecting painful outcomes. But when you intentionally focus on gratitude, possibility, healing, and faith, your emotional energy expands. Gratitude especially carries extraordinary transformative power because it shifts attention away from lack and toward abundance. And abundance grows wherever appreciation exists. The more grateful you become, the more emotionally open you become to receiving. Gratitude softens anxiety. It calms emotional desperation. It reminds your subconscious that life already contains blessings. And once the mind stops obsessing over scarcity, intuition becomes clearer. You begin noticing opportunities, connections, and guidance that fear once blocked from your awareness. Intuition often speaks through feeling rather than logic. It arrives quietly, gently, sometimes as a sudden knowing, sometimes as a peaceful certainty pulling you toward a new direction. But constant negative mental noise makes intuition difficult to hear. Fear creates emotional static. This is why mental discipline matters so deeply. Not rigid control, but conscious awareness of what you repeatedly think and speak. Because thoughts become words, words become beliefs, beliefs become emotional patterns become actions, and actions shape destiny. And as you move through this inner transformation, something remarkable begins happening. You stop feeling powerless against circumstances. You begin recognizing your participation in shaping your experiences. You understand that manifestation is not magic separated from reality. It is the natural consequence of inner alignment. Your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, expectations, and spoken words begin moving in the same direction instead of fighting each other internally. This alignment creates emotional strength. You no longer collapse emotionally every time difficulties appear because your inner foundation becomes stronger than temporary circumstances. Faith begins replacing panic. Trust begins replacing desperation. You realize that words spoken during difficult moments carry even greater power because they either strengthen fear or strengthen resilience. This is why spiritual laws remain constant whether people understand them or not. Life continuously responds to consciousness. The energy you carry influences the experiences you attract. Your dominant emotional atmosphere shapes perception. The words you repeat influence subconscious expectation. And your subconscious expectation influences behavior, relationships, opportunities, and outcomes. There is also a sacred responsibility hidden inside this understanding. Once you recognize the power of your words, you become more careful about the energy you release into the world. You stop speaking destruction over yourself and others. You stop casually predicting failure. You stop affirming suffering as permanent truth. Instead, your words begin carrying healing, encouragement, peace, and possibility. You become someone whose presence uplifts rather than drains. And slowly, almost quietly, your life begins reflecting this transformation back to you. Relationships improve because your communication changes. Opportunities increase because your mindset becomes more open. Emotional peace deepens because your inner dialogue softens. You stop fighting yourself internally. You stop speaking against your own future. This is where manifestation becomes deeply spiritual. You are no longer trying to force life into submission through desperation. Instead, you are aligning yourself with divine order. You are choosing thoughts, words, and emotions that harmonize with peace, abundance, healing, love, and wisdom. And once this alignment becomes natural, life begins flowing differently. Not perfectly, because every human journey still contains uncertainty, lessons, and moments of challenge, but differently. Difficulties no longer define your identity. Fear no longer controls every decision. Temporary setbacks no longer convince you that your future is ruined. You begin understanding that your spoken word can either imprison your spirit or liberate it. And perhaps the greatest transformation happens when you finally realize that the voice you hear most often throughout your life is your own. The world may criticize you occasionally. Circumstances may test you. Other people may misunderstand you. But the words you repeatedly speak to yourself every day shape your emotional reality more deeply than anything else. So if your words are constantly filled with hopelessness, your spirit becomes heavy. If your words are filled with fear, your future begins feeling smaller. But when your words become aligned with faith, gratitude, abundance, healing, and possibility, your subconscious begins building a completely different inner world. And from that inner world, a new life quietly begins emerging. So tonight, as you sit quietly with your thoughts, perhaps for the first time becoming truly aware of the language you use about yourself, your future, your dreams, and your life, remember gently that every word spoken with belief plants a seed within the subconscious mind. Some seeds grow into fear. Others grow into freedom. Some create limitation. Others create expansion. And somewhere deep within you, beyond the old fears, beyond the painful memories, beyond every limiting story you once repeated without question, there is still a voice waiting patiently to speak something entirely new into your life. A voice filled not with doubt, but with quiet certainty, reminding you softly that your words have always carried the power to change the direction of your destiny. There is a hidden force that quietly drains the energy of countless people every single day. a force so subtle that most never even realize they are feeding it constantly. And that force is resistance. Resistance to situations, resistance to people, resistance to fear, resistance to uncertainty, resistance to the past, resistance to change, resistance to life itself. The more a person fights emotionally against what they fear, the more power they unknowingly give to it. And this is why so many people remain trapped in cycles they desperately want to escape, because what the mind continuously resists with emotional intensity often remains active within the subconscious. You may have noticed this in your own life before. The harder you try not to worry about something, the more your mind keeps returning to it. The more emotionally angry you become toward a situation, the heavier your spirit feels. Resistance creates inner tension, and tension blocks clarity, intuition, peace, and spiritual alignment. It disconnects you from the calm wisdom within yourself. This is why emotional freedom is not found through force, but through release. The law of non-resistance teaches that when you stop fighting life emotionally, life begins flowing differently through you. There was once a woman who carried deep resentment towards someone who had hurt her many years earlier. Outwardly, she continued living her life, but inwardly she replayed the pain constantly, feeding anger every day through memory, imagination, and emotional attachment. The situation itself had ended long ago, yet emotionally she remained imprisoned inside it. Every conversation became connected to bitterness. Every disappointment reopened old wounds. Without realizing it, her resistance to the pain kept the pain alive. Then one day she finally understood something transformative, that what she continued resisting emotionally had become part of her identity. She realized she could not experience peace while remaining emotionally chained to resentment. Slowly she began releasing the need to fight the past. She practiced forgiveness, not because the pain never happened, but because she no longer wanted her spirit controlled by it. And as she released resistance, her emotional life began healing. Opportunities returned. Joy returned. Inner peace returned. The world outside her had not changed first. Her inner relationship with life had changed first. And perhaps this is where your own healing begins, not through controlling every external circumstance, but through changing the emotional energy you bring into your experiences. Many people unknowingly create suffering by mentally resisting situations long after they occur. They replay painful conversations endlessly. They imagine worst-case scenarios repeatedly. They argue internally with life itself, asking why things happened, why people changed, why plans failed, why uncertainty exists. But every moment of emotional resistance strengthens inner conflict. This does not mean becoming passive or allowing harmful behavior into your life. Non-resistance is not weakness. It is emotional wisdom. It is the ability to remain internally calm even while taking necessary action externally. It is refusing to poison your spirit with fear, anger, bitterness, or emotional obsession. Because whatever dominates your inner world eventually shapes your outer experiences. And this is where spiritual laws quietly begin revealing themselves. Life often mirrors your emotional atmosphere. A fearful mind notices danger everywhere. An angry mind attracts more conflict. A resentful heart struggles to receive peace. But when you begin practicing emotional release instead of constant resistance, your subconscious mind begins relaxing. Fear loosens its grip. Intuition becomes clearer. Opportunities become more visible because your mind is no longer clouded by emotional struggle. You begin understanding that resistance often comes from fear of losing control. Human beings naturally try to force certainty into uncertain situations. They try to control outcomes, control people, control timing, control how life unfolds. But constant emotional control creates exhaustion. It disconnects you from trust. And without trust, the nervous system remains trapped in survival mode. This is why faith becomes deeply connected to the law of non-resistance. Faith allows you to move through uncertainty without emotionally collapsing inside it. It allows you to trust that divine order may still be working beneath situations you cannot yet fully understand. Sometimes life removes people because your spirit has outgrown those connections. Sometimes delays are preparing you emotionally for what is coming next. Sometimes unexpected endings create space for a more aligned beginning. But resistance blinds people to these possibilities because fear narrows perception. And once fear dominates the mind, the subconscious begins creating emotional patterns around struggle. The body becomes tense. Thoughts become obsessive. Sleep becomes restless. Relationships become reactive. This is why emotional control matters so deeply. Not emotional suppression, but emotional awareness. The ability to pause before feeding negativity. The ability to observe fear without becoming consumed by it. The ability to consciously redirect your thoughts toward peace instead of panic. Because thoughts repeated emotionally become subconscious instructions. You may notice that people who constantly expect conflict often create conflict unconsciously. They carry emotional resistance into conversations, relationships, and opportunities before experiences even unfold. Their subconscious mind prepares them for battle instead of peace. But when you begin practicing non-resistance internally, your energy changes completely. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop feeding unnecessary emotional drama. You become calmer, clearer, more spiritually centered. And from that calmness, intuition grows stronger. Intuition rarely speaks loudly through chaos. It speaks softly through stillness. It arrives as inner knowing, gentle guidance, emotional clarity, or peaceful direction. But resistance creates so much internal noise that people lose connection with their deeper wisdom. They become trapped inside fear-based thinking instead of spiritually aligned awareness. This is why silence becomes healing. Stillness becomes healing. Breathing consciously becomes healing. Gratitude becomes healing. Because all these practices weaken emotional resistance and reconnect you to the present moment. Many people suffer not because of what is happening now, but because of what their minds continue resisting emotionally from the past or fearing about the future. And perhaps one of the most powerful forms of non-resistance is learning to release the need for immediate answers. Human beings naturally want certainty. They want guarantees before trusting the future. But life often unfolds through unseen timing. Some blessings arrive slowly because your spirit is still preparing to receive them fully. Some opportunities appear only after emotional healing creates space for them. This is where manifestation becomes misunderstood by many people. Manifestation is not forcing reality through desperation. It is aligning emotionally with trust, peace, clarity, gratitude, and expectation while releasing obsessive resistance. The more desperate a person becomes, the more emotionally attached they become to fear of absence. And fear of absence blocks abundance consciousness. Prosperity flows more naturally into an open spirit than into a fearful one. This is why letting go becomes spiritually powerful. Letting go is not giving up. It is releasing emotional attachment to struggle. It is trusting that what truly belongs in alignment with your life will not require constant fear to maintain. When you stop mentally chasing, forcing, and resisting, you create emotional space for divine order to move more freely through your life. And this principle applies deeply to relationships as well. Many people resist emotionally by trying to force love where peace no longer exists. They cling to connections already creating suffering because fear tells them letting go means failure. But emotional attachment built upon fear weakens self-expression and spiritual freedom. Real love flows through openness, honesty, growth, and alignment, not emotional imprisonment. The same is true for success. Sometimes people resist their own growth because change feels uncomfortable. The subconscious mind often clings to familiar suffering because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Even limiting beliefs can become emotionally comfortable over time. A person may desire abundance while subconsciously resisting opportunities because success feels unfamiliar to their identity. This is why mental discipline matters so deeply on the spiritual journey. You must become aware of what your mind repeatedly feeds emotionally. Every fearful thought strengthens fear unless consciously redirected. Every resentment strengthens emotional heaviness unless released. Every negative expectation influences subconscious perception unless transformed. And transformation begins through awareness. The moment you recognize resistance inside yourself, you reclaim the ability to choose differently. You stop feeding painful thoughts repeatedly. You stop replaying emotional wounds unnecessarily. You stop defining your future through past disappointments. Instead, you begin affirming peace, trust, healing, and openness. You may wake up each morning and quietly say, I release fear. I trust divine timing. Peace flows through my life. What belongs to me arrives naturally. I no longer resist my own healing. These affirmations gradually soften emotional tension within the subconscious mind. They teach your nervous system that safety can exist without constant control. And slowly, your entire energy begins changing. You become less reactive, less fearful, less emotionally exhausted. Situations that once overwhelmed you lose some of their power because your inner stability grows stronger. You begin responding instead of reacting. You begin trusting yourself more deeply. And perhaps for the first time in years, your spirit starts feeling lighter. This lightness is not accidental. It is the natural result of emotional alignment. Resistance drains energy because it keeps the body and mind trapped in inner conflict. But surrender to divine order creates flow. It allows creativity to return. It allows emotional healing to deepen. It allows prosperity consciousness to expand because fear no longer dominates every thought. And as your consciousness changes, your external experiences begin changing too. Opportunities arrive more naturally because your energy becomes more receptive. Relationships improve because emotional tension decreases. Decisions become clearer because intuition strengthens. Even your physical body may begin responding differently because emotional peace changes internal chemistry. You realize that non-resistance is not about becoming passive toward life. It is about becoming spiritually aligned with life. It is understanding that forcing, fearing, obsessing, and emotionally fighting reality only creates deeper suffering. True strength comes from calmness. True power comes from emotional balance. True manifestation comes through inner alignment rather than emotional desperation. And perhaps the deepest realization of all is this: the things you resist most intensely often reveal the areas within yourself still asking for healing. Resistance exposes fear. Resistance exposes attachment. Resistance exposes subconscious beliefs needing transformation. And once you begin facing those inner patterns honestly, healing accelerates. You stop blaming life constantly. You stop seeing yourself as powerless. You stop allowing temporary circumstances to define your identity. Instead, you begin trusting that even difficult moments can guide you toward greater wisdom, compassion, emotional freedom, and spiritual awakening. And as this understanding settles quietly into your spirit, you may begin feeling a calmness that once seemed impossible, a quiet knowing that life does not need to be controlled every second in order to unfold beautifully. Sometimes the greatest transformation happens not when you force harder, but when you finally release the emotional weight you were never meant to carry forever. So tonight, as you sit quietly with your thoughts, breathing slowly, allowing your mind to soften and your heart to open, perhaps you can begin releasing one fear, one resentment, one painful attachment, one exhausting struggle that has been living inside you for too long. Not because the experience never mattered, but because your peace matters too. And somewhere beneath the silence, beyond the noise of fear and emotional resistance, You may finally hear the gentle voice of your spirit reminding you that life begins flowing differently the moment you stop fighting yourself and start trusting the deeper wisdom already guiding your path. There is a quiet law moving beneath every human experience, invisible to the eyes, yet deeply woven into every thought, every word, every emotional reaction, and every action you release into the world. Nothing truly disappears. Every emotion carries energy. Every intention creates movement. Every thought plants a seed somewhere within the subconscious mind, and eventually, life begins returning those inner conditions back to you in forms you can finally see and feel. This is why some people unknowingly repeat the same painful patterns again and again, attracting similar disappointments through unresolved emotions, while others slowly transform their lives by changing the energy they carry within themselves. The law of karma is not punishment. It is reflection. It is life responding to consciousness. And perhaps one of the deepest truths hidden inside this spiritual law is that what you hold emotionally against others eventually begins affecting your own spirit more than anyone else. Resentment becomes heavy. Bitterness becomes exhausting. Anger repeated long enough becomes part of identity. The subconscious mind cannot fully separate what you emotionally send outward from what you continue experiencing inwardly. This is why forgiveness becomes one of the most powerful forms of spiritual healing. Not because painful experiences never happened, but because your soul was never meant to remain chained to suffering forever. There was once a woman who felt deeply betrayed by someone she loved. The pain stayed with her for years. Outwardly, she appeared strong, but inwardly, she replayed the memory constantly, reliving conversations, imagining different endings, feeding emotional wounds every single day. Her anger slowly shaped her outlook on life. She stopped trusting people fully. She expected disappointment before relationships even began. Fear and resentment became emotional habits living quietly inside her subconscious mind. Then one day, after years of emotional exhaustion, she heard something that changed her completely. She realized forgiveness was not about excusing the past. It was about freeing her future from being controlled by it. Slowly, she began releasing the emotional attachment to the pain. She stopped feeding the story repeatedly. She stopped defining herself through what had happened to her. And as forgiveness entered her life, peace slowly returned. Her energy softened. Her relationships improved. Her mind became calmer. Life itself seemed to flow differently because her inner world had changed. And perhaps this is where your own transformation quietly begins, in understanding that karma is not some distant force deciding your fate randomly, but a living reflection of the emotional, mental, and spiritual energy you continuously nurture inside yourself. If fear dominates your thoughts, fear eventually shapes your perception. If bitterness dominates your heart, bitterness clouds your experiences. But if peace, gratitude, compassion, faith, and forgiveness begin filling your inner world, your outer reality slowly starts reflecting those energies back to you. The subconscious mind absorbs emotional repetition deeply. Whatever you continuously think about with strong feeling eventually becomes familiar to your nervous system. This is why unresolved emotional pain often repeats itself through different situations and relationships. The lesson returns until healing begins. A person abandoned emotionally may continue attracting emotionally unavailable relationships until they heal the belief that they are unworthy of love. Someone carrying deep resentment may unknowingly create conflict repeatedly because anger has become emotionally familiar. Karma often reveals the emotional patterns still living inside the subconscious mind. And this understanding changes the way you view difficult experiences. Instead of seeing every painful moment as punishment, you begin seeing life as a mirror guiding you toward deeper awareness. Sometimes the situations that hurt you most are also revealing the areas within yourself still asking for healing, growth, forgiveness, and transformation. This does not mean you deserve pain. It means pain can become wisdom if you allow healing to enter where suffering once lived. And healing begins the moment you stop emotionally feeding old wounds. Many people believe forgiveness means forgetting, surrendering, or allowing harmful behavior. But true forgiveness is something far deeper. Forgiveness is releasing the emotional poison created by continuous resentment. It is choosing peace over emotional imprisonment. It is refusing to allow another person's actions to permanently control your inner state. Because every moment you remain emotionally attached to bitterness, your subconscious mind continues reliving the pain. This is why forgiveness is not only spiritual, it is psychological and emotional freedom. The mind becomes what it repeatedly rehearses. If you replay betrayal daily, your nervous system remains trapped inside emotional fear. If you replay rejection constantly, your subconscious begins expecting rejection everywhere. But when you consciously begin releasing those emotional attachments, your energy changes. You stop carrying the emotional weight of the past into every future experience. And slowly, your life begins changing too. Relationships become healthier because fear no longer dominates your interactions. Your intuition becomes clearer because emotional noise begins fading. Opportunities feel less threatening because your subconscious mind no longer expects constant disappointment. Emotional freedom creates space for abundance consciousness. This is where manifestation and karma become deeply connected. You attract not only through desire, but through emotional identity. Your dominant beliefs, emotional patterns, expectations, and subconscious programming influence the experiences you move toward and the energy you release into the world. If someone desires love while secretly believing they are unworthy, the subconscious conflict creates resistance. If someone desires prosperity while constantly fearing loss, fear weakens abundance consciousness. This is why mental discipline becomes essential on the spiritual path. You must become aware of what you repeatedly think, speak, and emotionally nurture inside yourself. Every fearful thought strengthens fear unless redirected consciously. Every negative expectation influences perception unless transformed through awareness. Every emotional wound ignored too long quietly shapes future experiences. But awareness changes everything. The moment you begin observing your inner world honestly, you reclaim your power to transform it. You stop reacting automatically from old emotional pain. You stop allowing past experiences to define your future identity. Instead, you begin consciously choosing peace, faith, gratitude, compassion, and trust. And as these emotional patterns strengthen, your subconscious mind slowly reorganizes itself around healing instead of survival. You begin noticing beauty more often. Your nervous system relaxes. You stop expecting betrayal everywhere. You stop emotionally preparing for disaster constantly. Life begins feeling safer because your inner world becomes calmer. This is why gratitude carries such extraordinary spiritual power. Gratitude interrupts the mind's obsession with lack and redirects attention toward abundance. Even in difficult seasons, gratitude reminds the subconscious that blessings still exist. It softens fear. It expands emotional openness. And abundance naturally flows more easily through an open heart than through a fearful one. There is also a deep spiritual truth hidden inside karma that many people misunderstand. Karma is not simply about external actions. Intention matters. Emotional energy matters. Consciousness matters. Two people may perform similar actions while carrying completely different inner motivations. Life responds not only to what you do, but to the emotional state from which you do it. This is why spoken words carry so much power. Words are emotional energy expressed outwardly. Every sentence influences the subconscious mind. Every repeated phrase strengthens emotional patterns. If you constantly speak hopelessness, your spirit becomes heavier. If you speak abundance, healing, trust, and peace, your subconscious begins aligning with those energies instead. This is why affirmations work most powerfully when spoken with genuine emotional presence. Imagine waking up every morning and quietly saying, "I release all resentment. Peace flows through me freely. I forgive the past and welcome healing. I trust divine order. Only love, wisdom, and abundance move through my life." These words gradually replace old subconscious programming with new emotional truths. And over time, the person you once were begins fading quietly. You become calmer in situations that once triggered fear. You stop reacting impulsively to criticism or rejection. You begin protecting your energy more consciously. You become emotionally wiser because healing creates perspective. And perhaps most importantly, you stop defining your future through the wounds of your past. Because your past may shape lessons, but it does not have to imprison your destiny. There will still be moments of emotional challenge. Human life will always contain uncertainty, endings, misunderstandings, and painful experiences. But once spiritual awareness deepens within you, you stop viewing those moments as permanent definitions of who you are. Instead, you begin seeing every experience as part of a larger journey guiding your soul toward growth, compassion, strength, and awakening. This understanding changes your relationship with suffering itself. You realize that holding on to anger hurts your peace more than anyone else's. You realize that constantly reliving painful memories drains emotional energy needed for your future. You realize that forgiveness is not weakness, but one of the greatest forms of inner strength. And slowly, you begin releasing emotional resistance that has been exhausting your spirit for years. This emotional release creates powerful transformation inside the subconscious mind. Because the subconscious responds deeply to repetition and feeling, forgiveness practiced consistently weakens the emotional charge connected to old wounds. Fear loses intensity. Resentment softens. Inner peace expands. And from that peace, intuition becomes clearer. You begin sensing which relationships align with your spirit and which no longer do. You begin trusting your inner guidance instead of fear-based thinking. You stop chasing validation from people incapable of giving genuine love. You stop forcing situations through emotional desperation. Divine order begins feeling more real because your mind is no longer clouded by unresolved emotional chaos. This is where spiritual healing truly begins, not through escaping life, but through transforming the way you experience it internally. You begin understanding that abundance is not only material success. True abundance includes emotional freedom, inner calmness, spiritual connection, meaningful relationships, mental clarity, and the ability to move through life without carrying constant emotional heaviness. A peaceful heart becomes one of the greatest forms of wealth, and perhaps the most beautiful realization hidden inside the law of karma and forgiveness is this: every moment offers the opportunity to create a different emotional future. No matter what happened before, you can begin planting new seeds today. New thoughts, new words, new emotional patterns, new beliefs, new energy. The subconscious mind can always be retrained. Fear can become faith. Resentment can become peace. Scarcity can become abundance consciousness. Emotional pain can become wisdom. And the person who once felt trapped by old wounds can become emotionally free through awareness, forgiveness, and spiritual alignment. So tonight, as you sit quietly with your thoughts, perhaps thinking about people who hurt you, memories that still carry emotional weight, or fears you have carried silently for too long, remember gently that forgiveness does not erase your past, but it can completely transform your future. Every moment you choose peace over bitterness, your spirit becomes lighter. Every moment you release resentment, your subconscious becomes freer. Every moment you choose love instead of fear, your inner world begins changing. And somewhere deep within you, beyond the old pain, beyond the emotional exhaustion, beyond every story your mind has repeated endlessly for years, there is still a peaceful part of your spirit waiting patiently for you to finally let go, breathe deeply, and step forward into a life no longer controlled by the weight of what once hurt you. There comes a moment in almost every human life when the mind becomes exhausted from carrying too much fear, too much pressure, too many unanswered questions, too many invisible burdens silently sitting on the heart. You may smile in front of others while inwardly feeling overwhelmed by uncertainty. You may try to appear strong while privately carrying anxiety about money, relationships, health, the future, or your own self-worth. And perhaps the heaviest burden of all is not the situation itself, but the constant mental struggle of trying to control every outcome through fear. The mind keeps replaying problems, imagining worst-case scenarios, searching endlessly for certainty, until eventually the spirit becomes tired. And this is where a deeper spiritual truth begins revealing itself. The burden was never meant to be carried alone. Because what you continuously hold emotionally in the conscious mind eventually becomes impressed upon the subconscious mind. Fear repeated daily becomes subconscious expectation. Worry repeated emotionally becomes internal programming. The subconscious mind accepts whatever thoughts are emotionally impressed upon it most often, whether those thoughts create peace or suffering. This is why some people unknowingly live inside cycles of anxiety, limitation, and emotional heaviness for years, because they continuously feed those patterns through fear-filled attention. But the moment you begin learning how to release the burden instead of emotionally carrying it, something extraordinary begins changing inside you. There was once a man who worried constantly about his financial situation. Every morning, he woke up with anxiety already sitting in his chest. Every conversation became connected to fear about survival. He mentally repeated the same fearful thoughts over and over again. What if things never improve? What if I lose everything? What if I fail? Without realizing it, he was deeply impressing fear upon his subconscious mind every single day. His body remained tense. His decisions became reactive. His imagination stayed trapped inside limitation. Then one evening, exhausted by his own emotional suffering, he heard a spiritual idea that transformed him completely. That worry is not preparation. Worry is emotional attachment to fear. He realized he had been carrying a burden mentally that was slowly draining his spirit. That night, instead of replaying fear, he consciously released the problem through faith. He stopped obsessively forcing solutions in his mind. He affirmed peace instead of panic. He trusted that divine intelligence could guide him more clearly than fear ever could. And slowly, over time, his inner world changed. New ideas came. New opportunities appeared. More importantly, he no longer lived emotionally imprisoned by anxiety. His outer circumstances improved because his subconscious mind was no longer being fed constant fear. And perhaps this is where your own healing quietly begins, in understanding that the subconscious mind is always listening. Every repeated thought becomes an instruction. Every emotional belief becomes a seed planted deeply into your inner world. If you constantly focus on problems, your subconscious becomes conditioned toward fear and struggle. But when you consciously impress peace, faith, gratitude, abundance, and trust upon the subconscious mind, your emotional state begins transforming from within. This does not happen through force. It happens through emotional alignment. Many people try to control life through mental tension. They believe constant worrying somehow protects them from pain. But worry does not create safety. Worry creates emotional exhaustion. It weakens intuition. It clouds clarity. It trains the subconscious mind to expect danger constantly. And eventually, the nervous system begins living in survival mode even when no immediate threat exists. This is why casting the burden becomes spiritually powerful. To cast the burden means to release emotional attachment to fear and place trust in a higher intelligence greater than the anxious mind. It means understanding that not every solution can be forced through fear-based thinking. Some answers arrive only after inner stillness returns. Some breakthroughs appear only after resistance softens. And once you begin practicing this release internally, your subconscious mind begins responding differently. The body relaxes. Thoughts slow down. Emotional pressure softens. You stop replaying fearful scenarios endlessly. You stop emotionally feeding the very conditions you wish to escape. Instead, you begin consciously impressing the subconscious mind with affirmations rooted in faith, peace, prosperity, healing, and trust. Imagine waking up each morning and quietly saying, "I trust divine order. Everything I need is already unfolding. Peace fills my mind and body. I release fear and welcome guidance. Abundance flows toward me naturally. I am supported in every area of my life." These words, when spoken with emotional sincerity, slowly begin reshaping subconscious belief systems. Because the subconscious mind responds deeply to feeling. You may repeat an affirmation mechanically with little effect, but when emotion enters the words, the subconscious begins listening more closely. This is why visualization also becomes so powerful. When you vividly imagine yourself peaceful, secure, healthy, successful, loved, and emotionally free, the subconscious mind starts accepting those states as possibilities instead of fantasies. The nervous system begins responding to the emotional images you repeatedly create internally. And over time, your outer behavior begins changing naturally. You become calmer during uncertainty. You make clearer decisions because fear no longer dominates your thinking. You begin attracting healthier experiences because your emotional state shifts from desperation toward trust. This is not magic separated from reality. It is the natural result of subconscious conditioning. Most people underestimate how strongly their emotional habits shape their experiences. If someone constantly expects disappointment, their subconscious mind prepares emotionally for disappointment before situations even unfold. If someone secretly believes they are unworthy of success, they may unconsciously resist opportunities that could transform their lives. The subconscious always seeks alignment between inner belief and external experience. This is why prosperity consciousness must first be cultivated internally before it fully appears externally. Abundance is not only financial. True abundance includes emotional peace, mental clarity, healthy relationships, spiritual connection, confidence, creativity, and trust in life itself. There are people with material wealth who still live emotionally trapped in fear, and there are people with simple lives who radiate inner peace because their subconscious minds are aligned with gratitude and faith instead of scarcity. And gratitude changes everything. The moment you shift attention away from constant fear and toward appreciation, your emotional energy changes immediately. Gratitude interrupts survival thinking. It reminds the subconscious mind that goodness already exists in your life. Even small moments of appreciation begin weakening emotional patterns of lack. A grateful mind becomes more receptive to abundance because it no longer operates entirely from fear of absence. And from this emotional openness, intuition begins growing stronger. Intuition is often blocked by mental noise. Fear talks loudly. Worry repeats constantly. Anxiety creates emotional static. But when the burden is released and inner stillness begins returning, intuition becomes clearer. You begin sensing which decisions align with peace and which are rooted in fear. You begin trusting your inner guidance instead of reacting impulsively to uncertainty. This is where spiritual laws begin feeling deeply personal rather than theoretical. You realize life is responding continuously to your dominant emotional atmosphere. Thoughts repeated emotionally impress the subconscious. The subconscious influences behavior, perception, decisions, energy, and attraction. And over time, Your outer experiences begin reflecting the inner conditions you nurture most consistently. This understanding changes your relationship with problems themselves. Instead of immediately panicking when challenges appear, you begin pausing internally. You stop emotionally magnifying every difficulty. You remind yourself that fear cannot guide you wisely. You stop carrying problems mentally long after action has already been taken. Instead, you begin trusting that divine intelligence can move through situations far more clearly than obsessive worry ever could. This trust does not make you passive. It makes you aligned. Because when fear no longer controls your subconscious mind, your actions become calmer, wiser, and more intentional. You stop forcing solutions from desperation. You stop chasing certainty compulsively. You begin moving through life with greater emotional balance. And emotional balance creates spiritual power. The more emotionally centered you become, the less external chaos controls your inner peace. Situations still arise. Uncertainty still exists. Human life will always contain moments of difficulty. But your relationship with those experiences changes completely once you stop feeding them through subconscious fear. You begin realizing that many burdens become heavier simply because the mind refuses to release them. Some people carry guilt for years. Others carry resentment, regret, heartbreak, shame, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty. And all these emotional burdens impress themselves upon the subconscious mind repeatedly until they begin shaping identity itself. But healing begins the moment you consciously decide that your spirit deserves peace more than your fear deserves control. This is where forgiveness becomes deeply connected to subconscious transformation. Forgiveness releases emotional heaviness from the subconscious mind. It interrupts repetitive suffering. It stops old pain from continuously shaping future experiences. Every time you choose peace over bitterness, your subconscious mind becomes freer. Every time you release fear instead of feeding it, your emotional energy expands. And slowly, your entire reality begins changing from within outward. You begin sleeping more peacefully. Your body carries less tension. Your relationships improve because emotional reactions soften. Your mind becomes more creative because fear no longer consumes all your mental energy. Opportunities appear more naturally because your subconscious is no longer conditioned toward constant limitation. This is why mental discipline matters so deeply on the spiritual journey. Not harsh self-control driven by perfectionism, but conscious awareness of what you repeatedly allow into your inner world. Every fearful thought strengthened repeatedly becomes subconscious programming. Every peaceful thought repeated consistently becomes subconscious programming too. Your inner world is always being shaped by repetition. And perhaps the most beautiful realization of all is this: the subconscious mind can always be impressed with something new. Fear can be replaced with faith. Scarcity can be replaced with abundance consciousness. Anxiety can be softened through trust. Emotional heaviness can become inner peace. No matter how long certain patterns have existed, transformation remains possible because the subconscious mind remains responsive to new emotional impressions. So tonight, as you breathe slowly and allow your thoughts to settle, perhaps for the first time in a long time, you may begin realizing how much unnecessary weight your spirit has been carrying. The endless worry, the constant mental pressure, the fear of outcomes not yet decided, the emotional exhaustion of trying to control everything through anxiety. And perhaps now, gently, quietly, without force, you can begin releasing some of that burden. Not because every answer has already appeared, but because your peace matters more than your fear. Because divine order still exists beyond what your anxious mind can currently see. Because your subconscious mind deserves impressions of faith instead of endless panic. Because life begins changing the moment your inner world stops feeding fear and starts trusting something greater. And somewhere beneath the silence, beyond the noise of worry and emotional tension, there is still a calm voice within you, patient and steady, reminding you softly that you were never meant to carry the whole weight of life alone, and that the moment you release the burden with trust, your spirit finally becomes free enough to receive the peace, guidance, healing, and abundance that were waiting for you all along. There is a force within human life more powerful than fear, more healing than time, more transformative than success, and yet many people spend years searching for it outside themselves without realizing it has always been quietly waiting within their own spirit. Love is not only emotion, it is energy, it is alignment. It is one of the deepest spiritual laws shaping every thought, every relationship, every experience, and every reflection you attract into your life. And the absence of love, whether toward yourself, toward others, or toward life itself, slowly creates emotional emptiness that no external achievement can fully heal. This is why people may gain wealth, recognition, or status and still feel disconnected inside, because the soul does not truly flourish through fear, control, or constant struggle. The soul expands through love. And perhaps one of the greatest misunderstandings people carry is believing love is only something to receive from others, while forgetting that the emotional atmosphere you create within yourself influences everything you experience outside yourself. The subconscious mind absorbs the energy of self-rejection just as deeply as it absorbs self-acceptance. If you constantly criticize yourself, compare yourself, doubt your worth, or emotionally abandon your own spirit, those patterns begin shaping your relationships, your confidence, your decisions, and even the opportunities you allow yourself to receive. But when love begins entering your inner world consciously, everything starts changing slowly from the inside outward. There was once a woman who desperately wanted love in her life, yet every relationship she entered brought disappointment, insecurity, emotional pain, or rejection. She believed she was unlucky in love, but beneath that belief was a deeper truth she had never fully faced. She secretly believed she was not worthy of lasting love. Her subconscious mind carried years of self-doubt, emotional fear, and unresolved pain. She constantly sought validation from others because she had never truly learned how to emotionally nourish herself. Then one day, after another painful heartbreak, she stopped asking why others kept leaving and began asking a different question entirely. How have I been leaving myself? That question changed her life. Slowly, she began healing the relationship she had with her own spirit. She stopped speaking harshly to herself. She practiced gratitude for who she already was instead of constantly focusing on what she lacked. She forgave herself for past mistakes. She began affirming love instead of fear. And as her inner world transformed, the relationships she attracted began transforming too. She no longer approached love from desperation. She approached it from wholeness. And perhaps this is where your own journey with love truly begins, not in trying to force someone else to complete you, but in understanding that your inner emotional state becomes the foundation for every connection you create in life. Because the subconscious mind constantly seeks alignment between your beliefs and your experiences. If you secretly believe you are unworthy, your energy begins reflecting insecurity. If you carry fear of abandonment, your actions may unconsciously push love away before it has a chance to fully grow. But when your inner world becomes rooted in self-respect, emotional peace, compassion, and spiritual trust, you begin attracting relationships that mirror those energies back to you. Love is deeply connected to manifestation because what you emotionally radiate influences what you attract. Fear attracts fear. Bitterness attracts conflict. Emotional desperation attracts instability. But peace attracts clarity. Gratitude attracts abundance. Compassion attracts deeper connection. And this does not apply only to romantic relationships. It shapes friendships, family dynamics, opportunities, creativity, prosperity, and even your relationship with life itself. Many people unknowingly block love because they are still carrying emotional wounds from the past. Old betrayals become subconscious expectations. Rejection becomes emotional identity. Pain repeated internally becomes a lens through which every new experience is interpreted. This is why forgiveness becomes essential again on the spiritual journey. Not because the past never mattered, but because unresolved pain quietly controls the subconscious mind until healing begins. And healing begins the moment you stop feeding emotional suffering repeatedly. The mind becomes what it rehearses emotionally. If you replay heartbreak constantly, your nervous system continues living inside emotional fear long after the event itself has ended. If you continuously think, "Nobody truly loves me," your subconscious begins searching for evidence supporting that belief. But when you consciously choose new emotional patterns, the subconscious mind slowly begins changing too. This is why affirmations become powerful acts of emotional healing when spoken with sincerity and feeling. Imagine sitting quietly each morning and saying, "I am worthy of love. Love flows freely through my life. I release fear and welcome peace. My relationships are aligned with honesty, trust, and emotional safety. I choose compassion instead of resentment." At first, these words may feel unfamiliar if fear has lived inside you for years, but repetition slowly creates new emotional pathways inside the subconscious mind. And over time, those pathways begin shaping your reality. You stop chasing validation from emotionally unavailable people. You stop accepting treatment that wounds your spirit. You begin listening more closely to your intuition because fear no longer drowns out your inner wisdom. And intuition becomes deeply important in love because the soul often recognizes truth before the mind fully understands it. There are moments when your intuition quietly warns you that something feels emotionally unsafe, even while your fear of loneliness tempts you to ignore it. And there are moments when your spirit recognizes peace in someone's presence before logic can fully explain why. Love aligned with spiritual truth often feels calm rather than chaotic. It brings expansion rather than emotional confusion. It strengthens your spirit rather than draining it constantly. But many people confuse emotional intensity with love because the subconscious becomes attached to familiar emotional patterns, even painful ones. Someone raised around emotional instability may unconsciously feel attracted to relationships that recreate those same emotional experiences. This is why subconscious healing matters so deeply. Without awareness, people often repeat emotional cycles instead of transforming them. And transformation begins through conscious love toward yourself. Self-love is not arrogance. It is spiritual alignment. It is understanding that your spirit deserves kindness, peace, emotional safety, and respect. It is choosing thoughts that nourish your mind instead of destroying it. It is protecting your emotional energy from constant negativity. It is speaking to yourself with compassion rather than cruelty. Because the words you repeatedly speak to yourself become subconscious truth. If your inner dialogue constantly says, "I'm not enough, I always fail, nobody chooses me, I'll never be loved," your subconscious absorbs those emotional instructions deeply. But when you begin speaking words of healing, confidence, abundance, and faith, your inner identity slowly transforms. And love changes far more than relationships. Love transforms the nervous system. It softens fear. It calms emotional tension. It creates openness within the heart. A loving mind becomes more creative because fear no longer consumes all emotional energy. A loving spirit becomes more magnetic because peace naturally attracts connection. Love expands consciousness itself. This is why gratitude is one of the purest forms of love. Gratitude is love directed toward life. It is appreciation for existence itself. It shifts attention away from constant lack and redirects the mind toward abundance already present. Even small moments of gratitude begin changing emotional frequency. A grateful heart becomes softer, calmer, and more receptive to blessings. And abundance flows more naturally through an open heart than through a fearful one. You begin noticing beauty more often. Sunlight feels warmer. Conversations feel deeper. Small moments become meaningful again because love reconnects you with presence. Fear pulls consciousness into survival. Love brings consciousness back into life itself. This is why emotional control becomes essential on the spiritual journey. Not emotional suppression, but awareness. Because anger, jealousy, resentment, and fear all influence the subconscious mind when repeated emotionally. Love requires awareness because the mind naturally drifts toward fear when left unconscious. You must consciously choose peace again and again until it becomes emotionally familiar. And slowly, your inner world changes. You become less reactive, more patient, more compassionate toward yourself and others. You stop needing to control every outcome because trust begins replacing fear. Divine order starts feeling real because you realize life is not only responding to external effort, but also to inner alignment. Love aligned with faith creates emotional freedom. You stop forcing relationships through desperation. You stop clinging to situations that continuously wound your spirit. You stop defining your worth through another person's ability to recognize it. Instead, you begin trusting that what truly aligns with your soul will not require abandoning yourself emotionally in order to keep it. This trust changes your entire energy. People feel safer around emotionally peaceful individuals because calmness carries healing energy. Your presence becomes lighter. Your conversations become more genuine. You stop projecting hidden fear into every interaction. Love begins flowing through your life more naturally because resistance softens. And perhaps the deepest spiritual truth hidden inside love is this: love is not weakness. Love is one of the highest forms of power available to human consciousness. It heals emotional wounds. It transforms subconscious beliefs. It reconnects people with purpose, peace, creativity, intuition, gratitude, and spiritual alignment. Even forgiveness itself is an act of love. To forgive does not mean forgetting pain. It means refusing to allow bitterness to poison your spirit forever. Love chooses healing over emotional imprisonment. Love releases resentment because peace becomes more valuable than revenge. And once resentment softens, the subconscious mind becomes freer to receive abundance, connection, and joy again. This is why spiritual healing cannot happen fully without love. You can achieve success while still emotionally suffering inside. You can appear strong while secretly feeling disconnected from yourself. But genuine healing begins when love enters the places within you that fear once controlled. When compassion replaces self-hatred. When trust replaces constant anxiety. When peace replaces emotional chaos. And perhaps tonight, as you sit quietly with your thoughts, reflecting on the relationships, memories, fears, hopes, and emotional experiences that shaped your journey so far, you may begin realizing something beautiful, that love was never only something you were searching for outside yourself. It was always something waiting to awaken within you first. Because the moment your spirit begins living from love instead of fear, your entire relationship with life changes. You begin seeing yourself differently. You begin seeing others differently. You begin moving through the world with softer energy, deeper wisdom, and greater emotional freedom. And somewhere beneath the noise of old pain, beyond the fear of rejection, beyond every moment you once doubted your worth, there is still a quiet voice within your soul reminding you gently that you were always worthy of love, not because of what you achieve, not because of who chooses you, but simply because love has been part of your true nature all along. There are moments in life when logic becomes exhausted, when the mind circles endlessly around confusion, uncertainty, fear, and endless possibilities. And yet somewhere beneath all the mental noise, beneath the pressure to always know the right answer, there is often a quieter voice trying gently to guide you. Most people have felt it at least once in their lives, a sudden inner knowing, a feeling impossible to explain logically, a deep sense that something is right or wrong before any physical evidence appears. Sometimes it arrives as peace, sometimes as discomfort, sometimes as an unexpected idea, a sudden warning, or an unexplainable pull toward a certain path. And although many ignore it, this inner guidance is one of the most powerful spiritual gifts human beings possess. Intuition is not imagination disconnected from reality. It is the soul communicating through feeling, awareness, and subconscious wisdom. And yet the tragedy is that many people spend so much time listening to fear that they lose connection with this deeper guidance entirely. The mind becomes crowded with anxiety, doubt, outside opinions, emotional wounds, and constant mental noise until intuition can barely be heard. Fear speaks loudly. Ego argues endlessly. Worry repeats itself constantly. But intuition rarely screams. It whispers. And only a calm spirit can hear it clearly. There was once a man who spent years trying to force his life into a direction that never truly felt aligned with his spirit. Outwardly, everything looked successful, but inwardly he felt emotionally exhausted, disconnected, and restless. Every day his intuition quietly warned him that something about his path no longer felt true, yet fear kept convincing him to stay where he was because change felt uncertain. He ignored the inner discomfort for years until eventually his emotional exhaustion became impossible to hide from himself. One evening, after sitting alone in silence, he finally allowed himself to listen honestly to what his spirit had been trying to say all along. He realized that the guidance had always been there beneath the noise of fear. Slowly he began making decisions aligned with peace instead of pressure. The changes were uncomfortable at first, but over time his life began transforming. His energy returned. His creativity returned. His sense of purpose returned. What changed everything was not external validation. What changed everything was finally trusting the wisdom within himself. And perhaps this is where your own transformation begins too, not by forcing answers through fear, but by reconnecting with the quiet intelligence already living within you. Because intuition is deeply connected to the subconscious mind. Your subconscious absorbs experiences, emotions, patterns, energies, and subtle awareness far beyond what the conscious mind fully understands. Often your spirit senses truth long before logic can explain it. This is why you may sometimes feel emotionally heavy around certain people without understanding why, or feel deeply peaceful in situations that make no logical sense, yet still feel right within your soul. The problem is not that intuition disappears. The problem is that fear creates so much internal noise that people stop trusting it. And fear becomes especially powerful when the subconscious mind is filled with old emotional wounds. Past betrayals create mistrust. Repeated disappointments create doubt. Negative thinking clouds emotional clarity. A person trapped in constant anxiety may confuse fear with intuition because both create strong feelings internally. But intuition feels different from fear. Fear contracts your spirit. Intuition guides it. Fear creates panic. Intuition creates quiet knowing. Fear rushes. Intuition remains calm even during uncertainty. This is why emotional healing becomes essential on the spiritual journey. A wounded mind struggles to hear guidance clearly because unresolved pain keeps projecting old fears onto new situations. If someone has experienced rejection repeatedly, they may assume every new relationship will bring pain even when genuine love is present. If someone carries subconscious fear of failure, they may avoid opportunities their intuition is actually trying to guide them toward. And this is where spiritual alignment changes everything. The more peace you create within yourself, the clearer your intuition becomes. The more emotional noise softens, the easier it becomes to recognize guidance. This is why silence, prayer, meditation, gratitude, forgiveness, and positive affirmations become spiritually powerful practices. They calm the conscious mind and create space for deeper wisdom to rise from the subconscious. Imagine beginning each morning quietly instead of immediately filling your mind with stress, comparison, fear, or endless distraction. Imagine sitting peacefully for a few moments and affirming, "I trust the wisdom within me. Divine intelligence guides my path. I am led toward peace, abundance, and right action. I release fear and welcome clarity." These words slowly impress trust upon the subconscious mind instead of constant anxiety. And over time, your inner world begins changing. You stop second-guessing yourself constantly. You stop looking outside yourself for every answer. You begin noticing subtle feelings more clearly. Intuition grows stronger because your spirit finally has space to breathe beneath the noise of fear. This is why manifestation is deeply connected to guidance. Many people try to force their desires through desperate action while ignoring the wisdom of intuition entirely. But true manifestation is not only about wanting something intensely. It is about aligning your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, actions, and inner guidance together. Sometimes intuition leads you away from what your ego wants because something better aligned with your spirit is waiting ahead. And this requires faith. Faith is not blind belief disconnected from reality. Faith is trusting the inner guidance you cannot yet fully explain. It is moving forward even when certainty does not exist externally. It is understanding that divine order often unfolds through intuition long before physical results appear. There will be moments when your intuition asks you to release situations that no longer align with your growth. There will be moments when your spirit quietly tells you to trust a new opportunity before evidence fully appears. There will be moments when your heart senses peace while your fearful mind still searches desperately for guarantees. And in those moments, the quality of your life often depends on which voice you choose to follow. Because the subconscious mind always moves toward what feels emotionally familiar. If fear has dominated your life for years, trusting intuition may initially feel uncomfortable. Peace itself may feel unfamiliar. Many people unconsciously trust fear more than inner wisdom because fear has become emotionally practiced. This is why mental discipline matters so deeply. You must consciously redirect your thoughts away from endless negativity and toward trust, gratitude, possibility, and spiritual awareness. The mind becomes stronger wherever attention repeatedly flows. If you constantly focus on fear, your subconscious mind becomes conditioned toward danger. If you constantly practice gratitude, trust, compassion, and affirmations rooted in peace, your subconscious gradually becomes more aligned with abundance consciousness instead of survival thinking. And abundance is not only material success. Real abundance includes emotional clarity, inner calmness, meaningful relationships, intuitive wisdom, spiritual connection, creativity, and freedom from constant inner conflict. A peaceful mind becomes fertile ground for intuition because there is less emotional chaos blocking guidance. This is also why spoken words carry enormous power. Every sentence repeated emotionally influences the subconscious mind. If you constantly say, "I never know what to do," "I can't trust myself," or "everything goes wrong," your subconscious absorbs those limitations deeply. But when you begin affirming trust and guidance consistently, new emotional pathways begin forming inside your mind. You may quietly repeat throughout the day, "I am guided perfectly. The right path becomes clear to me. I trust divine timing. I move through life with wisdom and peace." Over time, these affirmations become emotionally familiar. And once peace becomes familiar, intuition becomes easier to recognize. The beautiful thing about guidance is that it often arrives exactly when needed rather than exactly when demanded. Human beings often want immediate certainty about every detail of the future. But spiritual wisdom unfolds step by step because growth itself requires trust. Sometimes clarity only arrives after you release emotional resistance. Sometimes the answer appears after stillness returns. And this understanding changes your relationship with uncertainty itself. Instead of panicking whenever answers are unclear, you begin trusting that guidance continues unfolding even when you cannot yet see the entire path. You stop emotionally forcing life through desperation. You begin allowing divine order to move naturally through your experiences. This creates tremendous emotional freedom. Because when you trust guidance, you stop carrying the exhausting burden of trying to control every outcome. You stop obsessively searching for approval from everyone around you. You begin listening more deeply to your own spirit. And from that place, decisions become more aligned, relationships become healthier, and life begins feeling more authentic. Authenticity is deeply connected to intuition because your spirit always knows when you are abandoning yourself to please others. There is emotional heaviness that comes from living disconnected from your truth. The body feels it. The subconscious feels it. Your energy feels it. But when your actions align with your inner guidance, there is often a quiet peace beneath even difficult decisions. This does not mean the path always becomes easy. Human life will still contain challenges, uncertainty, and moments of doubt. But intuitive guidance helps you move through those experiences with greater alignment and emotional wisdom. It keeps you connected to yourself even during chaos. And perhaps one of the most important truths about intuition is this: your soul is always trying to guide you toward expansion rather than fear, toward healing rather than suffering, toward peace rather than emotional imprisonment, toward authenticity rather than performance, toward abundance rather than limitation. But the voice of intuition grows stronger only when you begin trusting it. And trust grows through practice. Every time you listen to your inner wisdom instead of fear-based panic, your connection deepens. Every time you honor what feels spiritually aligned, your confidence strengthens. Every time you choose peace over emotional chaos, the subconscious mind becomes more receptive to guidance. Slowly, your entire life begins changing from within outward. You become calmer during uncertainty because you no longer believe fear is your only source of protection. You stop chasing validation endlessly because your inner guidance becomes more important than outside approval. You become emotionally stronger because your peace no longer depends entirely on external circumstances. And perhaps tonight, as you sit quietly reflecting on your own journey, the decisions you have faced, the fears you have carried, the moments when your spirit tried softly to guide you while your mind remained trapped in uncertainty, you may begin realizing something beautiful, that the wisdom you have been searching for has never been completely outside you. Because beneath the noise of fear, beyond the pressure of expectations, underneath every painful memory and every anxious thought, there is still a calm voice within you, patient and steady, quietly reminding you that you were never abandoned by life, never disconnected from guidance, and never truly alone on your path, because the deeper wisdom of your spirit has been walking beside you all along, waiting gently for you to finally trust it enough to listen. There is a deep longing hidden inside almost every human being, a longing not only to survive, not only to achieve success, but to feel truly aligned with life itself, to wake up feeling that your existence has meaning, that your gifts matter, that your soul was designed for something greater than fear, limitation, or emotional confusion. Many people spend years trying to fit themselves into lives that never truly reflect who they are. They silence their natural talents, ignore their inner calling, suppress their creativity, and slowly disconnect from their authentic self because they fear rejection, uncertainty, or failure. And over time, this disconnection creates emotional exhaustion within the spirit. The body may continue functioning, but the soul quietly begins feeling trapped. This is why so many people outwardly appear successful while inwardly feeling lost, Because success without self-expression can never fully satisfy the deeper needs of the spirit. And perhaps one of the greatest spiritual truths is this: every person carries within them a divine design, a unique pattern of gifts, intuition, desires, strengths, creativity, and purpose meant to express itself through their life. You were never created to become a copy of someone else. Your soul was not designed for imitation. It was designed for expression. And the moment you begin aligning your life with that deeper truth, something extraordinary begins happening within you. Energy returns. Confidence grows. Intuition strengthens. Opportunities begin unfolding differently because you are no longer forcing yourself against your own spiritual nature. There was once a woman who spent years working in an environment that looked successful from the outside, but left her emotionally empty inside. Every day felt heavy. Her spirit felt disconnected from joy, creativity, and meaning. Yet she stayed because fear convinced her that following her true passion would be irresponsible and uncertain. Deep within herself, she carried a gift for creating beauty, helping others emotionally, and inspiring healing through her creativity. But she continuously ignored that inner calling because logic and fear seemed louder than intuition. One evening, after years of emotional exhaustion, she finally admitted something to herself she had avoided for too long, that her soul was asking for expression. Slowly, she began honoring her gifts instead of suppressing them. She stopped comparing her path to everyone else's expectations. She trusted her intuition step by step. And as she aligned more deeply with what genuinely fulfilled her spirit, life itself began responding differently. New opportunities appeared. Meaningful connections entered her life. Prosperity flowed more naturally because her energy was no longer trapped in resistance against her true nature. And perhaps this is where your own transformation quietly begins, not through becoming someone different, but through remembering who you truly are beneath fear, conditioning, self-doubt, and emotional limitation. Because your subconscious mind absorbs not only your fears, but also your suppressed desires, ignored talents, hidden dreams, and unexpressed creativity. When you continuously deny your authentic self, emotional heaviness begins forming within the subconscious mind. Anxiety increases. Motivation fades. Emotional numbness grows because the spirit longs for alignment. This is why self-expression is not selfish. It is spiritual. Your gifts exist for a reason. Your intuition exists for a reason. Your desires often point toward deeper truths about your divine design. This does not mean every desire comes from wisdom, because fear and ego can create illusions too, but genuine soul-aligned desires often carry a feeling of expansion, peace, creativity, inspiration, and emotional aliveness. And intuition plays a powerful role in recognizing that difference. The mind often seeks safety through familiarity, while intuition quietly guides you toward growth. Fear says, "Stay where you are." Intuition whispers, "There is more waiting for you." Fear says, "What if you fail?" Intuition asks, "What if your soul is trying to lead you somewhere greater?" And many people remain emotionally stuck for years because they trust fear more than their own inner guidance. But the moment you begin listening to your deeper wisdom, life begins shifting. This does not always happen suddenly. Sometimes transformation begins with small decisions, small moments of honesty, small acts of courage. You may start speaking more truthfully about what you truly want. You may stop forcing yourself into environments that drain your spirit constantly. You may begin exploring talents you abandoned long ago because fear convinced you they were unrealistic. Slowly, your relationship with yourself changes. And that inner shift changes everything externally too. Because manifestation is deeply connected to alignment. Many people try desperately to attract abundance while remaining disconnected from their authentic self. But true prosperity flows more naturally when your thoughts, emotions, actions, intuition, and spiritual energy move together harmoniously. When you continuously betray your own spirit, subconscious resistance grows stronger. Emotional conflict weakens clarity. Fear blocks intuition. But when you begin aligning with your divine design, your energy changes completely. You stop chasing success only for external approval. You begin seeking experiences that nourish your spirit. You stop comparing your path constantly to others because you realize every soul carries a different purpose. And this realization creates emotional freedom. Comparison is one of the greatest destroyers of self-expression because it disconnects people from their own unique journey. The subconscious mind absorbs feelings of inadequacy whenever you constantly measure your life against someone else's path. You begin believing your gifts are not enough. Your creativity weakens. Your confidence shrinks. But your spirit was never meant to become another person's reflection. Your life unfolds according to its own divine timing and design. And divine timing often requires faith. There will be moments when your path feels uncertain, when external evidence has not yet caught up with your inner vision. There will be moments when fear tells you to give up because results seem slow. But spiritual growth often happens invisibly before it becomes visible externally. Seeds grow beneath the surface long before flowers appear. This is why mental discipline matters deeply on the spiritual journey. You must consciously protect your inner world from negativity, doubt, and constant fear-based thinking. Every thought repeated emotionally becomes instruction for the subconscious mind. If you constantly tell yourself, "I'm not talented enough, I'm too late, I'll never succeed," your subconscious begins accepting limitation as truth. But when you consciously affirm your alignment, your spirit gradually becomes stronger. You may begin each morning saying, "I trust my divine path. My gifts are valuable. I am guided toward the right opportunities. Abundance flows through my authentic self-expression. I no longer fear becoming who I truly am." These affirmations slowly reshape subconscious beliefs. They weaken emotional resistance and strengthen spiritual confidence. And confidence built upon alignment feels different from ego. Ego seeks validation constantly. Spiritual confidence comes from inner knowing. It is calm rather than loud, peaceful rather than desperate. It does not require endless approval because it grows from authenticity instead of performance. This authenticity also transforms relationships. When people suppress their true self for too long, relationships often become emotionally exhausting because they are built upon masks rather than truth. But when you begin expressing your authentic spirit honestly, healthier connections naturally begin forming. Some people may leave because your growth no longer aligns with their expectations, and although painful, this often creates space for more genuine relationships to enter your life. Because divine order continuously moves life toward alignment. Sometimes situations collapse not to punish you, but to redirect you. Sometimes closed doors protect you from paths that would have drained your spirit long-term. Sometimes emotional discomfort is simply your soul signaling that you are living too far away from your authentic self. And this realization changes how you experience struggle itself. You stop viewing every challenge as failure. Instead, you begin asking deeper questions. What is life trying to teach me? Where am I resisting my true nature? What part of myself have I abandoned? These questions create awareness, and awareness begins transforming the subconscious mind. The subconscious responds powerfully when your conscious thoughts, emotional energy, and spiritual intentions become aligned. Your intuition sharpens. Creativity expands. Emotional clarity deepens. You stop feeling trapped between who you are and who you pretend to be. And this creates tremendous healing. Because emotional suffering often increases whenever the soul remains disconnected from self-expression. Creativity blocked too long becomes heaviness. Truth silenced too long becomes inner tension. Dreams ignored too long become quiet sadness living beneath daily life. But once expression begins flowing again, energy returns naturally. You may notice yourself feeling lighter, more alive, more connected to the present moment. Small moments begin carrying meaning again because your spirit is no longer emotionally suffocating beneath fear and suppression. And abundance begins appearing differently too. Prosperity consciousness is not only about money. True prosperity includes emotional fulfillment, meaningful work, spiritual peace, creative expression, loving relationships, physical vitality, and alignment between your inner world and outer life. Some people achieve financial success while remaining emotionally disconnected from purpose. Others may have less material wealth, yet radiate joy because they are living aligned with their soul. But often, authentic alignment eventually attracts both inner and outer abundance because energy flows more powerfully through people no longer resisting themselves. This is why gratitude becomes essential again. Gratitude strengthens alignment because it teaches the subconscious mind to recognize the value already present within your life and within yourself. A grateful spirit becomes more receptive to guidance, opportunities, and abundance. And perhaps one of the most beautiful truths about divine design is this: you do not need to force yourself into becoming worthy of your purpose. Your worth already exists. The journey is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing the fear, conditioning, and emotional limitations hiding your authentic self. Your intuition already knows what brings your spirit alive. Your subconscious already carries the blueprint of your deeper desires. Your soul already senses where peace exists. But fear often convinces people they must ignore themselves in order to survive. And yet the greatest emotional freedom comes when you finally stop abandoning yourself. When you stop silencing your truth. When you stop apologizing for your gifts. When you stop shrinking your spirit to fit comfortably inside environments never meant for your growth. When you trust that your divine design has meaning even before the entire path becomes visible. And perhaps tonight, as you sit quietly reflecting on your own life, the dreams you buried, the talents you doubted, the desires you ignored, the moments when your intuition tried softly to guide you towards something more aligned, you may begin realizing that your soul has never truly stopped calling you toward your authentic path. Because beneath the fear, beneath the uncertainty, beyond every expectation placed upon you by the world, there is still a deeper part of yourself patiently waiting to be fully expressed, a peaceful, creative, intuitive spirit that was never meant to live trapped inside limitation forever. And somewhere within the silence of your own heart, beyond all the noise of fear and comparison, life may already be whispering gently to you that the person you were always searching for was never someone you needed to become, but someone you were meant to remember all along. There is a quiet conversation happening inside your mind every single day. A conversation so constant that most people no longer even notice it. And yet this invisible dialogue shapes emotions, decisions, relationships, confidence, health, success, and the entire direction of life itself. Every thought repeated with emotion slowly becomes accepted by the subconscious mind as truth. Every fearful sentence strengthens limitation. Every hopeful sentence strengthens possibility. This is why some people unknowingly live inside emotional prisons built not only by circumstances, but by the words they continuously repeat within themselves. They speak defeat before opportunity arrives. They expect failure before action begins. They rehearse fears so often that the subconscious mind eventually accepts struggle as normal. And once limitation becomes emotionally familiar, life itself begins reflecting that inner condition outwardly. But hidden within this same spiritual law is one of the greatest powers available to human consciousness, the power to consciously deny limitation and affirm truth aligned with healing, peace, abundance, faith, love, and divine order. Because the subconscious mind responds not only to external events, but to the emotional authority of repeated thought and spoken word. The moment you begin changing the language of your inner world, your emotional energy begins changing too. And when emotional energy changes consistently, your experiences gradually begin transforming from within outward. There was once a man who constantly spoke negatively about his life without realizing the impact his words were having upon his subconscious mind. Every day he repeated phrases like, "Nothing ever works out for me," "I'm always struggling," "Life is unfair," and "I never get what I want." At first, these seemed like harmless expressions of frustration, but over time those words became emotional beliefs deeply impressed upon his subconscious. He began expecting disappointment automatically. Opportunities felt invisible to him because his mind had already accepted limitation as truth. Then one day, after meeting someone who spoke about life with peace, confidence, and gratitude despite facing challenges of their own, he realized something profound, that his words were shaping his emotional reality. Slowly, he began changing the language he used toward himself and toward life. Instead of repeating fear, he began affirming possibility. Instead of speaking defeat, he spoke trust. At first, the changes felt unnatural, but over time his emotional state transformed. His confidence grew. His decisions improved. His relationships softened. Life itself seemed to respond differently because the subconscious mind was no longer being fed constant negativity. And perhaps this is where your own transformation quietly begins, not through controlling every external circumstance immediately, but through becoming aware of the invisible words and beliefs shaping your subconscious every day. Because whether consciously or unconsciously, you are always affirming something. Some people affirm fear repeatedly without realizing it. Some affirm scarcity. Some affirm loneliness. Some affirm weakness, rejection, failure, or hopelessness through the language they constantly repeat emotionally. And the subconscious mind listens carefully. The subconscious does not deeply analyze whether a statement is objectively true or false. It responds to repetition and emotional intensity. Whatever thoughts you emotionally impress repeatedly begin forming subconscious patterns. This is why negative thinking becomes dangerous when practiced unconsciously for years. A person may say, "I'm just being realistic," while continuously reinforcing emotional hopelessness inside their own mind. But spiritual transformation begins the moment you consciously interrupt those patterns. This is where denials become powerful. A denial is not denial of reality itself, but denial of fear's authority over your spirit. It is the conscious refusal to emotionally accept limitation as your permanent truth. When fear says, "You will always struggle," a spiritual denial quietly responds, "Fear has no power over my life." When anxiety says, "Nothing will improve," your spirit responds, "Divine order is already unfolding." Denials break subconscious attachment to limitation. And affirmations replace those old emotional patterns with new spiritual truths. Imagine waking each morning and consciously saying, "I am guided and protected. Abundance flows freely through my life. I release fear and welcome peace. Divine intelligence leads me toward success. Love, healing, and prosperity surround me." These words may seem simple at first, but repeated emotionally over time, they begin reshaping subconscious identity itself. Because words carry emotional vibration. Every sentence influences your nervous system. Every repeated thought shapes perception. Every affirmation either strengthens peace or strengthens fear. This is why spoken word power has existed in spiritual teachings throughout human history. Human beings become what they emotionally rehearse most consistently. And this understanding changes your relationship with language itself. You begin noticing how often people unconsciously speak limitation into their own lives. They say, "I can't," before trying. They say, "Things never work out," before opportunities even appear. They say, "I'm always unlucky," while unknowingly conditioning their subconscious mind toward disappointment. Over time, these statements become emotional expectations, and expectation influences attraction deeply. Manifestation is not only about desire. It is about dominant emotional belief. If your conscious mind desires success while your subconscious remains filled with fear and negative affirmations, inner conflict develops. The subconscious always moves toward what feels emotionally familiar. If struggle has been rehearsed emotionally for years, abundance may initially feel unfamiliar or unsafe. This is why consistent affirmations become essential for spiritual and emotional transformation. And repetition matters deeply. One positive thought cannot instantly erase years of subconscious conditioning. But repeated affirmations spoken with emotional sincerity gradually weaken old mental patterns. The subconscious mind slowly begins accepting peace instead of panic, possibility instead of hopelessness, abundance instead of scarcity. This process requires patience because the subconscious changes through consistency. Many people abandon affirmations too quickly because external results do not appear immediately. But the deeper work begins internally long before external evidence becomes visible. The nervous system begins calming. Self-worth begins strengthening. Fear begins softening. Emotional reactions change. And slowly, your outer experiences start reflecting those inner transformations. This is why emotional control matters so much on the spiritual journey. Because affirmations spoken while constantly feeding fear emotionally create resistance within the subconscious mind. Transformation requires awareness. You must consciously notice when negative thoughts arise and gently redirect them instead of emotionally surrendering to them automatically. This does not mean pretending painful emotions never exist. Human life still contains uncertainty, grief, disappointment, and challenge. Spiritual wisdom is not emotional suppression. It is emotional direction. It is choosing which thoughts deserve repeated emotional energy and which no longer deserve control over your inner world. And gratitude becomes one of the most powerful affirmations of all. Gratitude quietly tells the subconscious mind, there is already goodness in my life. It shifts emotional focus away from constant lack and toward recognition of abundance already present. Even small moments of gratitude begin transforming emotional energy. A grateful spirit becomes more receptive to peace, opportunities, creativity, and healing because fear no longer dominates consciousness entirely. This is why people aligned with prosperity consciousness often speak differently about life. Their words carry expectation rather than defeat. They trust possibilities more than limitations. They affirm peace even during uncertainty because they understand that the subconscious mind continuously responds to emotional language. And this affects relationships deeply too. If you constantly affirm rejection internally, relationships may become shaped by insecurity and fear. If you affirm trust, self-worth, compassion, and emotional safety, your energy changes. You stop approaching love from desperation. You stop expecting abandonment automatically. Your subconscious begins allowing healthier connections because emotional patterns have shifted. The same principle applies to success, creativity, health, and spiritual growth. Every area of life reflects subconscious beliefs eventually. This is why mental discipline becomes sacred work. Not rigid perfectionism, but conscious awareness of what you repeatedly feed your spirit. Some thoughts strengthen life. Others weaken it. Some words expand your energy. Others drain it. Every day you are either reinforcing fear or reinforcing alignment. And perhaps one of the most important spiritual truths hidden inside affirmations is this: your subconscious mind is always listening, especially when emotion is involved. The words spoken during moments of fear, sadness, anger, or hopelessness often impress themselves deeply because emotional intensity strengthens subconscious absorption. This is why protecting your inner dialogue becomes essential. You must learn to speak to yourself with compassion even during difficulty. Instead of saying, "Everything is ruined," you may affirm, "This moment will pass, and clarity is coming." Instead of saying, "I'll never succeed," you affirm, "Life is guiding me toward greater alignment." Instead of repeating, "I am broken," you affirm, "Healing is unfolding within me." And slowly, your relationship with yourself changes. You become gentler internally, more hopeful, more emotionally resilient. Fear loses some of its power because your subconscious mind no longer receives constant reinforcement of negativity. You begin feeling safer within your own thoughts. This emotional safety creates tremendous healing, because many people suffer not only from life circumstances, but from the unconscious emotional violence of their own inner dialogue. They criticize themselves constantly. They rehearse failure endlessly. They expect pain before life even unfolds. But affirmations interrupt that cycle. They remind the subconscious mind that new possibilities exist. And as your inner language changes, intuition becomes clearer too. Fear creates mental noise. Negative thinking clouds perception. But affirmations rooted in peace calm the nervous system. They reconnect you with spiritual trust. You begin listening more closely to your deeper wisdom instead of reacting automatically from anxiety. This creates alignment with divine order. You stop forcing life through emotional desperation. You stop emotionally identifying with every fearful thought that enters your mind. You begin understanding that thoughts are seeds, and your subconscious is fertile ground constantly receiving what you repeat most consistently. So you become more careful with what you plant. You plant gratitude instead of resentment, peace instead of panic, faith instead of hopelessness, compassion instead of self-hatred, possibility instead of limitation. And slowly, your life begins growing differently because your inner world is no longer feeding emotional darkness constantly. And perhaps tonight, as you sit quietly reflecting on the words you have repeated to yourself throughout your life, the beliefs you have unknowingly carried, the fears you have emotionally rehearsed again and again, you may begin realizing that your spirit has been listening to every sentence all along. The beautiful thing is this: no matter how long certain negative patterns have existed, the subconscious mind can always receive new instruction. New emotional truths can be planted. New beliefs can grow. New affirmations can reshape identity itself. And somewhere beyond the old fear, beyond the limiting stories repeated for years, beyond every painful sentence once spoken in moments of hopelessness, there is still a deeper voice within you, calm and steady, quietly waiting for you to finally speak words that heal instead of harm, words that expand instead of limit, words that remind your spirit not of fear, but of the peace, abundance, love, and divine possibility that were always trying gently to rise within you all along. And if this journey touched your heart, inspired your spirit, or helped you see your life with new clarity, then take a moment to support the channel. Like this audiobook, share it with someone who may need these words today, and subscribe to CliffNote Chronicles for more powerful audiobooks, life-changing affirmations, spiritual wisdom, manifestation teachings, and deep self-growth journeys designed to uplift your mind, heal your spirit, and transform your life from within. Stay connected, stay inspired, and remember, the life you desire begins with the thoughts you choose today.